What's up? I'm Robin, I make stuff, and today I thought I would show you guys the difference between Arches paper and some other watercolor paper. There's a huge difference, and as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, paper is something that you definitely want to spend the money on. It's really gonna affect the outcome that you're going for. So let's jump in. So on this board here, I have a ripped up sheet of Canson watercolor paper. This paper is 140 pound and 300 GSM. On my other board, I have a ripped up sheet of Arches watercolor paper. This is rough 300 G, 140 pound. So we're working with the same supposed number quality of paper, but there is a huge difference. Now, Arches is a cotton, pure cotton, as you see right here, pure cotton. I don't know what exactly this is made out of. Just because it says watercolor paper does not mean that's gonna have the same result as some of the nicer papers. Spend the money, invest in Arches or something that's a higher grade paper. This pad is right here, you could see, right here, it says rough. So it's gonna have a little bit more of a texture. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the Canson paper, and it doesn't really have much of a texture at all. It's very, very smooth. Here is the Arches paper. Now you can see that there is definitely a rough, kind of bubbly, pebbly texture on there. Arches, Canson. So, definitely difference in the texture. I personally like the rough texture because I do a lot of like dry brushing and things like that, and the texture will help create a texture feel in my watercolor. But let's jump in and start putting paint on this paper so you can see the difference. Okay, I'm just using a small butcher pan, and I like this because it keeps all my water in here. If it tips or whatever, it's lightweight and it doesn't break. Okay, so I'm gonna pull out a few different colors to kind of mix together. We're using ultramarine blue, green gold, some yellow ochre, burnt sienna, undersea green. So let's put these on my little butcher tray and get to work. All right, let's start out with our cheaper paper. Okay, I'm gonna be using a Princeton Velvet Touch long round brush, size 14. And I'm gonna put a little bit of water on the bottom of my paper here. And we're just gonna do some big old pine trees. So it kind of hit that water down there, which is cool. That's what I wanted it to do. Put some of this green in here. Okay. And put a little bit of a kind of forest vibe back here in the back. I'm just gonna tilt this a little bit. All right, so we're just gonna leave that like that, and then I'm gonna come back afterwards and see what it looks like when it dries and maybe put another layer on top. Let's switch over to Arches. Okay, so I've got my Arches sheet over here. We're gonna basically do the same exact concept. So I'm gonna start by just getting my paper wet down here on the bottom. I'm gonna come in and do my tree right here, my big tree that I was doing in the other picture. So we'll start out and just kind of put this pine tree vibe in here. I can already tell a difference in the way that this paper is responding. It's like absorbing it differently. The water doesn't sit on top as much in this paper, so it's definitely a significant difference. I have a lot more control, I would say. Okay, now it's hitting that water down below. And the way that it's running here, totally different than that Canson paper. The Canson paper just kind of was like, and like went everywhere. Just kind of putting some multiple different colors in here. Okay, now I wanna go back behind here. I'm gonna put that extra little forest area lighter. Normally I would do the opposite. I would do the background first and then kind of build, but that's okay. I'm just trying to show you the difference in the paper. Yeah, this water it like stays in one place versus the Canson paper just kind of runs everywhere, which is not helpful. You have way less control with that paper, in my opinion, just based off of this little exercise. Let's go back and see what our other one's doing. This is gonna be crazy different. Okay, so here's the way our other one looks. Definitely different than this one on the arches. Now I didn't use as much paint on the background with this one yet, because I did the front layer first. I don't know why I was working backwards, but I was, you know, who cares, whatever. So you can see here, I put those tiny little dots in there of that gold green, and they just like stayed there, like floated on top, versus this arches paper. Everything, it goes where I want it to go, essentially. I have a little more control. So here's what I've got so far. Here's my the differences in the two. I can see a difference. Let's go back to our Canson paper and let's put another layer in here and we'll just keep building on it. So we're just gonna do another darker layer of trees kind of in the front here. Okay, I'm gonna put another big tree while this is still a little bit wet, just so it will kind of like suck up that water. It just doesn't bleed the same way, it just like, it's very different. You can see that left some of the paper towel texture on the paper, which is great if you want texture, but at the same time, that's what I love about arches. I'm not loving this too much. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna try a totally different brush. We're gonna use a fan brush. Now, I have cut this brush up so that it's different on all the edges, and then I do this to all of my fan brushes, and I just buy really cheap ones. And that way you get some variation in what you're putting down. Just get a little bit wet. Not wet wet, just a little wet. Wow, this paper is so different. All right, I'll put some grass in there. I know, just going with the flow. Okay, let's leave this. Okay, so here's kind of what I've got going on so far. These like dots right here are really throwing me off because I wanted them to bleed out and they just didn't do it. Let's switch back to arches. Okay, so here's what our arches looks like. A lot softer in terms of how it's flowing out there. Definitely got more control on this paper than I do the other paper. And it flows better, it's a little bit softer in terms of what it is looking like. Definitely softer. So I'm just putting a really light layer in here to be trees in the background, like way back there. Okay, and then let's put some of those bigger trees over on this side like we did on the other paper. And it's hitting that water and just kind of bleeding out. You can see how that is doing that. Not really any real definition of tree at this point. It's just kind of bleeding and real soft. And then you get some of that nice like dry brush texture of the paper down here because it's rough. So when your brush is a little more dry, then you get a little bit more of that texture from the paper showing through, which is kind of cool. I would say that Arches really allows you to build. This other paper, and maybe it's just that I'm not used to it, but the other paper, it feels like I put stuff down and it like just sits there, or I don't really know how to describe it. It feels really, really elementary. It's probably just because I never use it. I definitely prefer the Arches, this cotton paper, and the way that it dries. Let's go back to the Canson paper. I don't even know what's going on with this paper, guys. This just doesn't look the same. Canson, Arches. Which one do you like better? Let's go back into this one here and do something. I don't even know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna do something. It's just like too smooth. It's just too smooth. I'll turn this into some boulders down here, I guess. Some kind of rock face. I don't know. I don't know what's happening anymore with this, but here's where I'm at. Just not what I really wanted it to look like. Okay, here we are. Here we are. So stuff that's in the foreground typically is going to be the darkest, which will help separate that background from the foreground. So in case you're wondering why I made it so light in the back, it's because you want the stuff in the front to be the darkest. Even the grass, you want that to be the darkest. I'm kind of putting some other colors in here just to mix it up. I did the same thing with the other one. It just didn't work the same. Okay, so here's this one. This is Arches. And here's this one. This is Canson. It just holds the paint differently. It flows differently. I prefer Arches. Which one do you prefer? Have you used both these papers before? Which one's your favorite? Let me know, chime in. Well, thanks for hanging out while I made stuff. Pretty much like this. I think it's gonna go on my mom's fridge. And make sure you like, subscribe, comment, leave a comment, ask a question, tell me which one you like better, and hang out with me next time when I make stuff.
They wonder how I do it like that. 7 flex on the jacks on that.